Do you ever feel like you have reached your limit, your capacity? Your brain is full, your calendar is full, your plate is full. You just can't. Yeah, me too. It's like when your phone storage fills up and you get that message that you can't store any new information until you clear up some space. That is exactly how my head feels. It's like when people try to tell me something, I really want to say, I'm so sorry, but I have literally no space in my head to process this information. It's like I need to clear something out in order to fit anything new in. And honestly, right now, I don't even have the bandwidth to clear it, which is probably the same reason that when I get that notice on my phone, I go in, delete one useless app, and call it a day. Just make enough storage for whatever I need right now, because this sounds like a problem for another day. And it makes sense because at this point, the mental load of raising teens, it can be a lot. Every task somehow feels critical to their futures. Every decision feels as if it can affect the entire trajectory of their lives. Every conversation feels like it needs to be the one where you actually get through to them. And every hug feels like you need to hold on just a bit tighter and longer because the time with them that you used to be counting in years is now down to months. They're stressed about exams and grades and college applications. They're navigating relationships and friendships. They're exhausted from early morning meetings, exams, classes, after school practices. And they're hungry. They're always hungry. And guess who takes the brunt of all of this stress? I think you know the answer to that. We try to help them avoid burnout, but we still need to stay on top of them to keep their head in the game. But we can't help but feel the pressure too. We just feel it more as worry. Worry about their futures, their decisions. Will they make the right ones? And what if they don't? We worry about them getting their hearts broken or their dreams shattered. We worry about the drugs and vape and guns and violence that they're surrounded by every day. We worry about what they're being exposed to on social media. What is actually going on those screens that they're always engrossed in? What's coming through those ever-present AirPods? Is it something that will shatter their self-esteem? Is it dangerous? Is it unable to be taken back once it's out on the internet? Will they give into the pressures? We worry about the rising mental health crisis and suicide rates and political instability. We need to make hard decisions about curfews and sleepovers and dating and trips. We need to walk a fine line between being the parent who sets boundaries and setting too many so that they just sneak around them. We need to keep communication open, but don't push. We need to be there when they want us to listen and leave them alone when they don't. And we're supposed to know the difference. We need to choose our battles and bite our tongues and somehow not take anything that they say or do personally. We need to know that, yes, they are a reflection of how they were raised, but no, they are still somehow not a reflection of us, because these are two very different things. And while they seem the same on the surface, they're not. The person who they are becoming is a direct result of what we put into raising them. But they are still unique and independent people who are separate from us. That can be really hard for us to differentiate, especially for moms who have put their hearts and their souls, their time, money, sacrifice, and heartache. And now it becomes one more thing to endlessly contemplate every decision that we have ever made. We're constantly performing a balancing act, managing the pushes and the pulls, the relational dialectics of this relationship, thinking and calculating how to manage just the right amount of consistency and just the right amount of change, giving them just the right amount of autonomy for their age and the right amount of connection with us, the right amount of openness between us, and the right amount of closedness to give them their privacy. Managing our similarities and our differences, recognizing the ideal in this relationship and accepting the real in this relationship. It's no wonder that we can feel like we have reached our limit, our capacity. When we think we just can't, you know what? We do. Somehow we always do because we're the moms, and that's just what moms do.
Hey guys, it's Jen. This is another episode. Well, the beginning of 2 episodes of Reframing Me. This week, we will revisit a huge 2-part conversation celebrating us, the moms. I mean, not that we need an excuse to celebrate us because we're pretty damn amazing. But these episodes initially celebrated our 50th episode, and this week we reached 100 episodes. So I thought it appropriate to revisit these mom episodes because sometimes we just need some extra girl time and definitely girl power. I hope you enjoy going back into the archives as much as I did.
I saw a tweet recently that said, why are working moms called working moms and working dads are just called dads? And I know, right? And over the last 17 years of us being dual career parents, where I know that each of us have had times in our jobs that were more demanding than the others, and we've each had times where our income was higher than the others, or our hours were more, or the stress was greater. And in those 17 years, I am always referred to as a working mom. And my husband, to my knowledge, has never once been referred to as a working dad. Now, relatedly, I have also told you that I am the default parent, 100%. And I know that many, if not even most of you are too. Now, the default parent is that assuming, of course, that there are 2 parents present, the default parent is typically the one who is first in line when it comes to any childcare, child-related, or home-related tasks, whether it's remembering to complete the school forms or getting sports emails or calls from the doctor's office. The non-default parent may even ask, who is their doctor again? Oh, just the same doctor that they've had, since they've been alive. Or is it default parents in charge of making the plans for those super convenient early dismissal days or knowing when they're scheduled for dentist appointments? Who's their dentist? They do go to the dentist, right? Yep. Every 6 months for like 16 years. Or who cuts their hair, or knowing who is their best friend's mom, or how do we sign them out of school early, or what's their birth date and social security number? Do they even have a social security number yet? Yes, because I did that too. 17 years ago, and then 15 years ago, and then again 13 years ago. Or knowing any of the other 2 million other tasks and piece of child of home related information that we all need to process and manage on a daily basis. Who gets the call from the school nurse if someone has a fever? Guess what? If you get that call, you are the default parent. Now, despite how it may sound, it's not that we don't have partners who are good or helpful or contributive. It's just that there is typically one parent who is the default, and then they may sub out tasks or information, even a lot of it, to the other parent. But it always filters through that default parent. Now, if you felt all of this to your soul, you are the default parent. I came across this term in an article years and years ago. For some reason, it has always been a comfort to me to just know that it's not my imagination. It is actually a thing. Perhaps someone scholarly, perhaps not, I don't even know at this point, but someone felt it important enough to label it, which means that it's not just me, which has always at least made me feel support and comfort in the fact that I'm not alone. Like all good things recently, it has been trending on TikTok. So now that it's TikTok official, I guess, it's so official that it gets severe enough sometimes, psychologists have labeled it an actual syndrome. Default parent syndrome is more than an individual problem, though. Although, yes, there are some fathers who are the default parent, 100%. Don't come after me with that. Societally, though, it is a systemic and collective experience that is a total bias towards women and mothers in providing that primary care for parenting and home-related tasks. Now, obviously, this bias is largely a product of a culture that is based in the patriarchy that has continued to some degree despite evolving over time. What is the most interesting, though, is that research finds that many women and mothers who do struggle with default parent syndrome feel the same as I do and acknowledge that their husbands or partners are engaged in the home. They're supportive, they're excellent fathers. However, like me again, these women also report feeling overwhelmed by this role. I mean, it is a lot of responsibility and it's mentally taxing to manage all of this information. And then when you are a working mom too, I mean, our brains can only process so much. Managing a career and being the default parent for teenagers, it can feel a bit draining. Lest, however, we think for a second that the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. It's not any easier to be the default parent of teens and a stay-at-home mom either. Stay-at-home moms face their own challenges at this point. Research finds that they feel lonely, they feel a bit lost in life, feel useless now that their kids are older and don't need them as much. These stay-at-home moms often reach a point where they'd like to re-enter the workforce. And I have heard personally from quite more than a few people about struggles to get back into the workforce after their quote unquote break to raise kids. So obviously you can't see me, but I'm rolling my eyes. Personally, I have always held a weird position among moms because while I have always worked full time, with my job, my schedule has always been somewhat unstructured and very flexible, especially the more I transitioned to teaching online. Back when I was younger and much less tired and clearly more enthusiastic, I would legit get up at 4 a.m. to work every single day. I always said that I would rather work at 4 a.m. and then I could be at pickup at 4 p.m. I was always at their school and I never missed out on anything. I mean, I totally paid the price because physically and mentally, I was a complete and total disaster. But when their teachers would say things to me like, "Oh, I didn't even know that you worked," or other moms would say to me that I was super mom. Well, it just made it all feel worth it to 30 something, care what people think, want everybody to like me, and think I'm amazing, Jen. Well, I think that we have all realized by now that 47-year-old Jen has zero fucks left to give on this. So I get myself a full 7 hours of sleep now. So because of this strange position of mine, I have always floated in this somewhat solitary space between I totally relate to the working moms who are trying to balance it all, the kids, the career, the guilt, the feelings of inadequacy. But I was always with the stay-at-home moms who still felt the stress, the guilt, and their own feelings of inadequacy. Now, societally, moms are kind of set up to fail. I mean, first off, we're set up to be the default parent. Then, rather than just being labeled as moms, like dads are labeled as dads, we're forced to choose a side. Do we want to keep the careers that many of us have worked for years to earn and to establish, thereby being labeled as working moms who are, for the most part, going to be running themselves ragged to keep up with the stay-at-home moms, yet will still be judged for being too hands-off and out of the loop on their kids? Or we can instead opt out to give up the career that many of us have worked years to earn and to establish, thereby being labeled as stay-at-home moms who, for the most part, are going to be running themselves ragged to make up for the fact that they've given up a career and are quote unquote only moms now. And they will still be judged for being too helicopter mom or too almond mom or too snowplower mom or too hands-on mom or whatever label they want to give us. So which do you want to be? Despite feeling physically and mentally exhausted, do you want to feel like you haven't lived up to your potential? Or do you want to feel like you haven't lived up to your potential? Tough call, right? Oh, and don't forget, we're going to be pitted against each other too. They'll even name it the mommy wars. Lovely, right? Because God forbid that we were able to support each other as women and support each other's choices. No, we can't do that. Instead, let's create a division between the two groups and perpetuate a faux war between the working moms and the stay-at-home moms. And wouldn't even be better if, because of this, both sides are made to feel inadequate in some way so that we end up disliking the other side and hating ourselves for falling short. So today and Friday, we're going to have somewhat of a girl power conversation. Thank you to Lizzo for inspiring me. Today, we're going to get a bit more into this default parent concept, as well as how this great working mom, stay-at-home mom debate looks in the teen years. When we were new moms, the stay-at-home working mom debate promised us support no matter which decision we made. But fast forward 14 or 16 or 18 years, and no one really talks about how that actually went and where either choice leaves you. I mean, besides being the default parent, that is. We'll also have a conversation about 7 tips for work-life integration, whether it's a career that you currently have or if you are someone who is re-entering the workforce. This is where we will expand in part 2 when we will have the conversation about that career relaunch with 6 tips for re-entering the workforce and how we all can build our personal brand. This is definitely the biggest topic that I have done. And I think it's because it's quite a few topics, but they all kind of blend seamlessly together. And there is so much I want to get to. I can promise you, though, that in both episodes, I am definitely going to try to get something for everyone here. Working moms, stay-at-home moms, work-from-home moms, all of us. No mommy wars here. Because the grass, it isn't greener on the other side of the fence. No, girl, it is a lovely green, raging full of weeds on both sides of that old fence. Okay, so let's revisit this default parent concept because, as you may tell already, I'm super interested in this. Mainly because it's just such a huge responsibility that I really think we all just organically associate with mom. And in 17 years of momming, I have really not met a dad who is actually the default parent. Definitely not in a 2-parent household. I know, again, you may come it with me and be like, oh, I'm the default dad or I have the default dad. Okay, great. But personally, I know quite a few dads who are more hands-on than most, even most of the hands-on involved dads. But still, I would question if they're actually the default parent. But you know who typically is? Well, obviously, moms. Now, I've also found a list of characteristics that make it more likely that will be the default parent and suffer from default parent syndrome. And I've got to be honest, I feel a bit attacked by this list. Okay, so the first, at least one or both of the parents had more traditional gendered norms and more patriarchal norms regarding parenting and household tasks growing up. Check. One or both of the parents growing up observed the women within the family solely or mostly responsible for parenting and household tasks. Check. The mother feels guilt or anxiety if or when her attention shifts away from parenting or household tasks. Check. The mother has a difficult time communicating her wishes. I had a difficult time communicating that sentence. Okay. The mother has difficulty communicating her wishes or expectation to others. Check. The mother has challenges with people pleasing, and I must quote, particularly within relationships with one's family, and an ongoing struggle with, quote, perfectionism. Checkmate. So, I don't know about you, but I feel attacked. Obviously, like most characteristics, the more you have, the more likely that you're actually experiencing this to the syndrome level, more so than just say you're the one who the school calls when there's an issue simply because you're the mom, if that makes sense. So, anytime you have a syndrome, there are obviously going to be some negative consequences. Obviously, the default parent is going to feel it. They'll suffer from chronic fatigue and burnout. They may have feelings of resentment even towards their partner or their children even. They may feel a diminished ability to care for themselves. They may even experience a significant decline in their mental health. Now, as we have said like a zillion times, our families are fill in the blank. Did you get it? Social systems, and we are interdependent components, which means that what impacts one of us impacts all of the others. So the non-default parent may have unrealistic expectations about the default parent's capacity. Now, personally, my favorite is when my husband will call me and he'll ask me some specific random piece of information that he needs on the spot to answer a question. Like, what amount was a deposit in a particular bank account in March of 2021? And I want to respond like, I really appreciate that you think my head is a supercomputer, but alas, you're going to need to give me a bit of a time on that one. Now, this parent, the other parent, may feel a disconnection and even a distance from the default parent, as well as they may experience a decreased quality in feeling about their own parenting skills, and it may even lead to issues in that parent-child relationship. And the kids, of course, they also feel every push and pull in the system. So they may also experience unrealistic expectations about my capacity. Oops, did I say my? I meant whoever the default parent may be, as well as, they might have diminished expectations for the dad's capacity. Sorry, again, my bad. I mean for the non-default parent's capacity. This is one you see everywhere, right? Tweets, memes, TV, real life. In fact, wait, it wasn't that long ago that there was a video, remember, from, I think it was the Today Show. It was two kids whose iPad died, and they used the front door Ring camera to call the mom to fix it. And she's like, where's your father? And they're like, I don't know, the garage, which was like 10 feet away or something. And instead, they went through the extensive process of calling their mom through the Ring cam. Now, I'm going to guess that she's the default parent. Now, the biggest issue with this, right, is that the mom, she's only going to feel more burnt out and more overwhelmed because of the fact that the kids act as if they need only her for everything. And of course, it would also then potentially lead to decreased relationship quality with the dad because of a lack of opportunities for the dad to connect. This is actually the perfect example of two things that we repeatedly talk about, right? Our families as systems with interconnected and interdependent components, and how all of our communication is a series of interactions that build on each other and impact our future interactions. While the role of the default parent may change as our kids get older, I know that sometimes I feel like with most other things, it's somehow even harder now. No, they won't use the Ring camera to tell me that their iPad is broken, but somehow the issues seem bigger and more important. like remembering to register for the ACT and the SAT, and how the driver's ed process works, and college applications, and knowing where they are and when they need to be picked up or expected home, or who they are with, or what games and practices are on what days at what sports fields. And when there's an issue with a friend or with a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a teacher or a coach, the default parent gets the emotional load that we opened up this episode with too. I would like to tell you that we can fix this, but let's be honest, it's not going to change, especially not now for us at this point. The best that we can hope for is, I guess, that now we have somewhat more mature people in our house. And yes, we will still carry the default load, but we have more people to sub some of it out to. Really, to me, the best is actually knowing that this is a thing. It's a real thing. Like I said, it's not my imagination or your imagination. You're not the only one. You're not alone in feeling completely exhausted by this mentally and physically taxing role. It has a name, and it's mom. I'm just kidding. It's called the default parent, but colloquially, it's called mom. Perhaps that will bring you some comfort too. Now, as if this being the mom / default parent thing isn't physically, mentally, and emotionally draining enough, many of us are also managing a career too. We said that this societal pull towards the mom being the default comes out of a culture passed on by the patriarchy, a culture of gendered roles in our families that were commonplace through minimally the mid 20th century. Now, about the mid to late 20th century, though, we were fortunate enough to see many women push through the barriers and the ceilings and become much more independent in this still patriarchal society. Fast forward to the present, and many of us, we're facing the reality of these efforts. It's not that we can't be anything or do anything that we want, because now we absolutely 100% can. We can be moms or housewives or doctors or leaders or astronauts or teachers or coaches or nurses or engineers or artists or literally absolutely anything that we want to be. We can choose to get married or not. We can choose to have careers or not. We can choose to have children or not. I remember one day years ago, I was in the girls section at Target. The kids were really little, and I was all dressed up from work. You know, back in the days when I actually got dressed up for work, I was exhausted. I saw a graphic t-shirt that said on the front, "Girls can do everything." I remember needing to control myself from screaming and instead only texted a couple of friends. No, no, no. Girls cannot do everything. Stop setting them up for this. Girls can do anything, anything, not everything. We can't and shouldn't need to do everything. I understand you meant well, Target, but I was the wrong girl on the wrong day. And there is such a monstrous difference between doing anything and doing everything. Girls can do anything is empowering. It teaches girls that the possibilities are endless, that they are capable, intelligent, talented, and able to make good choices to make themselves happy and successful. Girls can do everything is a burden. It's saddling them down with the weight of the world on their shoulders. It's like applying for a promotion only to get it and realize that, oh, they're not hiring for your old position. You're just going to do the old job too, okay? I saw a tweet this week that said, and I quote, "There is an entire generation of women who are drowning because they were raised with traditional gender roles while being empowered to be independent. These women still take on the majority of house duties while simultaneously killing it in the workplace. They're tired." Wow, you want to talk about something that resonated with me, and probably many of you too. This is the difference between being anything and being everything. Over the last couple of decades, thankfully, many work environments have become very family friendly, giving maternity leave or even paternity leave. Fun fact, I was one of the very, if not the very first people to apply at UNCW to take FMLA. And that was with my second, so 15 years ago. And I only got a reduced workload of teaching 2 courses rather than 3 for a semester. And that policy had been in the works for like 20 years to even get that far. Now, even dads get paternity leave. Employers provide work from home options, daycare options, pregnancy, breastfeeding, or pumping areas. Pumping areas, is that what they're called? I wanted to say pumping stations, but my husband, he works in infrastructure, and I picture him talking about a pump station, like a water pump station. So I don't think it's pump station. You know, whatever it is called, where you go to breast pump to pump for the baby for breastfeeding. Anyway, the prominence of these issues and the integration of these changes in work environments reflects a growing awareness of the needs of working parents, which is awesome. But much, if not most of this surrounds the needs of new moms. It's as if the challenges of integrating work and family just poof, they disappear as babies get older. In reality, though, it often gets harder, and many of us feel even more pulled between our careers and our families. Many of us had to survive those early school years that I see my sister navigating through right now with my niece who's 7. The biggest issue, of course, are the care gaps, like the teacher work days or the early dismissal days. Sure, because there's nothing easier than ending a workday at 11:30 on a Wednesday. And the challenging things like that Tuesday field trip that she wants you to go and chaperone, or the 1 p.m. conference, or the 2 p.m. performance. And as we have talked about in a number of episodes now, we can look at the different stages of parenting through that life cycle perspective. And we can see that we have moved from the parents of young children stage into the parents of adolescence or teen stage. And just like anything else, just as we figured out how to manage work and a new baby and then work and young kids, now here we are trying to manage work and teens. And just like I said, that the discussion about working and parenting acts as if this all resolves somehow because our kids reach school, well, it definitely acts as if by the time they're teens, our role as parents, well, it's pretty much over, right? We can clock out now because they're clearly independent. I'm pretty sure that we can all attest to this not being the case, right? In fact, there are even fewer after school and care options for tweens and teens. And no, high schoolers obviously don't require as much supervision per se. But all you'd need to do is take a glance at our master calendar on the door to see just how busy their lives are. And who is going to get them to all of these activities and jobs and practices and social engagements and volunteering? You know, the activities and jobs and practices and social engagements and volunteering that they need to both get into college and to be a happy, healthy, well-rounded human who stays out of trouble, which is what we ultimately want, right? That would be us. And research shows that once again, these responsibilities fall primarily on mothers rather than fathers. While yes, care for teens is less physically demanding and time intensive, I think we can all attest that it often requires more emotional work and takes more of a mental toll because they are now their own independent people with their own identities. And they need us to guide them as they navigate complex social and emotional issues. And unfortunately for working moms, bosses and colleagues who may have been accommodating of new moms' breastfeeding needs, they don't necessarily feel as accommodating of a week that includes a 4 p.m. lacrosse game on Monday, a 4 p.m. soccer game on Wednesday, and a 4 p.m. track meet on Thursday. And being up with a crying baby all night gets a whole different type of sympathy than being up all night with a troubled teen. And because of that different type of sympathy, we're also unlikely to share the issues that keep us up at night now. This invisibility that comes with mothering older children can often make it feel harder for women to make choices about work and family, especially because typically these women are now farther ahead in their careers and their jobs have even more responsibility. We are constantly hearing about work-life balance, but really, again, I think that this is something that sets us up for failure. When I used to aim for work-life balance, which I did, people would ask me, how do you do it? How do you do it all? And my answer was always a snarky, well, I'm mediocre at everything. It's not hard. It's easy to balance things when you're just mediocre. And honestly, even in hindsight, while I will say mediocre was a bit dramatic and unnecessarily self-deprecating, I wasn't thriving at either side because a balance implies keeping both sides even, right? That's balance. Keeping exactly the right amount of work on this one side of the scale and exactly the same amount of family on the other side of the scale. And that doesn't work. And it wasn't until I learned that it's actually better to look at this as work-life integration than to look at it as a balance. And that's when I found the actual balance that I was always searching for. When you approach it instead as work-life integration, you're playing the long game. Yes, there will be periods when your family needs more from you, and there will be times when work demands more of you. So go with it. You need to be constantly reprioritizing what needs your attention at that moment. So, okay, I work completely from home now. I told you that. Outside of a meeting here or there, I work entirely on my laptop and meet entirely on Zoom. On a typical day, I get up and get the kids ready and out for school. Then I'll come back and I'll do a few house things. Then I'll sit and I'll work for a few hours. And then I'll work out. And then I'll go pick up the kids and take them to any after school activities. And then I'll work some more while they're at practices. Then I'll get everyone home and do house things after, another hour or so of working then after dinner. And then I wrap up the evening back with family time. Everything is just a complete blur. All the lines are blurred together. And this is pretty much the formula that I've followed now for the last few years. Because of the stage of life I'm in and the point of my career that I'm in and my kids' ages, I do love this way of working. But if I'm being completely honest, my formula totally has its flaws that I need to work on fixing for a better balance. Like, it's really, really hard to accomplish work in the little blocks that I actually have to work. Say I have an hour during a practice. I can work totally. I bring my laptop and I get work done. But I need to plan for a certain type of work that I can devote an hour to. I can't do anything that really forces me to get involved because by the time I do get involved, practice is over, time to go. Or like if I'm scheduling student meetings, I can't promise them that I won't be in the car with poor Wi-Fi or that my kids won't need something mid-meeting. And I do feel a bit disconnected from work. It's like I'm this little tiny floating island over here. And to my family, it does seem sometimes like I'm always working. I mean, I'm not, but I am. Does that make sense? I'm never completely here or completely there. So yeah, it's not perfect, but it works for me. I do think that the overall concept of striving for work-life integration over balance is the way to go because unfortunately, life doesn't like to stay neatly compartmentalized like balance would imply. Instead, the overall idea of integration is that both of these parts of your life are given the attention that they deserve. And sometimes one needs more and sometimes the other needs more. Research consistently shows that having better work-life integration means lower stress, increased happiness, and fewer health problems over the long run. So let's have a conversation about some ways that you can foster a better integration of the two in your life. First, regardless of if you work primarily out of the home or are primarily work from home, you need to put space between home and work. If you work out of the home, that's a lot easier than if you work from home. You can pull away on Fridays or after your shift and be like, peace out, bitches, as you drive away. But for those of us who work from home, you can't really do that, right? So you need to instead create the physical space between the two. Even though I love sitting at the kitchen table working, I try to do the majority of my work upstairs in my little, what I call my broadcasting nook, so that I know and everyone else knows that when I'm there, I'm working. Regardless, setting up something, a routine, whether it's a drive home from work or walking downstairs or closing up the laptop or driving to Starbucks for coffee or whatever silly ritual you want to do. Do something to create that space, some type of delineation between work and the rest of your life. Space doesn't end there, though. It's mental space too. Now, just like we need to physically remove ourselves from our workspace, we also need to mentally remove ourselves too. And regardless of if you work from home or at work, it's often hard for all of us to do this, especially because we are accessible through phone or text or email 24/7. So, second, disconnect. Walk away. Set that phone on Do Not Disturb. Just don't log in. It's funny because if we are walking into a meeting, we have no trouble silencing our phone. But on a Wednesday evening or on a Saturday to be with our families, for some reason, we feel like we can't do that. So put it down, turn it off, just walk away. Third, be present where you are. When you're at work, be at work. And when you're at family, well, that sounds weird, but I was going to say home, but I can't say home because I feel like I'm always at home, well, or in the car. But when you're at family, be at family. This is the one that I tend to struggle with, and it's a two-parter. And to be totally honest, I totally suck at both parts. Be efficient with work. And I am the worst with this. I am the queen of getting distracted. I have bought more items from email that have popped up while I'm working. I swear. If I actually want to focus, I absolutely must put my phone on Do Not Disturb because I am distracted by every notification. I mean, I never care about notifications until I'm working. Then it's like, ooh, driveway camera detected motion. Or, ooh, Free People has the season's must-have shoes. Ooh, People breaking news says what? Peloton tweeted. I mean, I am so weak. Any notification that pops up, I need to read. And I can't say no to students who want to meet at a pickup time. So I end up Zooming in a parking lot. But I'm no better on the other side. I work sitting at swim practice. I read emails while I should be listening to my kids. I grade papers, watching TV during what should be quote unquote family time. For someone who preaches be present, I really need an intervention on this one. But I want you do as I say, not as I do. Be present. Be efficient at work so you don't need to worry about it outside, and keep work out of your life. Fourth, have a clear routine that allows for you to integrate these two areas of your life. Okay, so this routine can totally fluctuate as the needs of either side change. But as a day-to-day, you need a routine, 100%. Even if it's a chaotic mess like mine, it's my chaotic mess, and it is a total routine, even down to eating some nuts at my 10 a.m. mid-work break or my 11:30-ish pre-workout smoothie or my post-workout protein bar as I go back to working. It's a routine with definite delineating markers to show where I am and what I should be doing. I told you that I used to get up ridiculously early to work. I was in person then and much more on a set schedule. So I made the decision that I would rather work at 4:30 a.m. and pick my kids up at 3:30 p.m. So every day that was my routine. So maybe you skip lunch so you can go to their games, or you use lunch to scroll TikTok and send your teens funny videos, or set your phone on Do Not Disturb an hour before bed to sit and watch TV with them, or get up early to work out. Which takes me to number 5. Don't forget self-care in all of this. You cannot just be family and work all day, every day. That is the most surefire way to burn out and be miserable. You need you time too. Even if it's a half-hour walk at lunch or a 15-minute meditation and skincare routine at night, you cannot forget the you in all of this, or none of this works. Maybe you get up a half an hour early to meditate and journal, or journal at lunch. Which brings me to number 6. Look at me and my segues today. When you're trying to find this work-life integration, reflect on it. Ask questions like, when I'm at work, I'm worrying about what? Are you wondering how you'll get to the game on time, or who your daughter will get a ride home with, or how am I going to make it to the grocery on the way home? And ask, when I'm with my family, I'm thinking about what? Are you thinking about if you will get the project completed, or brainstorming ideas for your next article, or making to-do lists in your head, or working on the agenda for tomorrow's meeting? And if I had unlimited time and money, I would what? Would you still work? Would you do something different? Would you work part-time? Would you hire a house cleaner? Would you buy your oldest a car so he could help with transportation? Or the number one obstacle to my work-life integration is what? Time? There just isn't enough of it. Working structured hours, having a boss who doesn't respect life commitments, coworkers who don't respect boundaries, a spouse who doesn't take my job seriously, kids who don't appreciate the sacrifices I make for them. But ask yourself these questions and be thorough and honest in your responses, because these more specific and technical questions, they are just as hard, if not harder, than the more reflective philosophical questions that we usually prompt our journal entries with. Once you start to identify your feelings of guilt or resentment, or feeling that you are just stuck in a rut, you see where they're coming from. You can also then tackle number 7, and you can start to see how to fix them. Some of them might be very easy to fix. Maybe you waste so much of an afternoon grocery shopping and you didn't realize that that was weighing so much on you. Okay, order your groceries, have them delivered instead. Look at that, easy breezy. Maybe if you had unlimited money, you said you'd hire a house cleaner. Well, you don't need unlimited money. You're not hiring Alice, for heaven's sake. What would it cost? Do you have that money? Or if not, could you trade something less important for it if it would help you with your integration? Years ago, long before I could afford a house cleaner, I made the decision that I wouldn't think it was unreasonable to hire a babysitter, and I would rather have a clean house than go out. And if I was going to be spending the money anyway, I would rather spend it on a house cleaner and spend the time with my kids. Now, for me, that worked. Maybe you realize that your boss doesn't respect your home life and expects work from you that is outside of the scope of your job or interferes with your personal life. You need to set boundaries. Just today I had to reply to a request to take on a large amount of extra work and chair a committee I said, I am happy to support the committee's efforts, but my June will be filled with college visits, so I am unable to take the lead. Period. Boundary. Something that I have only gotten good at doing lately. Thankfully, I do have a boss who is respectful of boundaries, especially ones involving family. But if you establish boundaries and you don't have a boss who does that, Perhaps you start looking for a work environment and a boss who does. If your husband or kids don't respect the hard work you do or the time you sacrifice, it's time for a conversation and a plan. If that is what is holding you back, you need some help. It doesn't make you any less of a mother or a wife or a woman to ask for help. If you had the resources, would you choose to quit working entirely? Because those stay-at-home moms, they have it so nice, right? Well, like I said, the grass isn't always greener on the other side of the fence. And I constantly and consistently hear from stay-at-home moms of teens that they want to feel productive. They want to feel useful. They want to feel needed again. They want to work. Greener grass, right? But how? They've been on that quote unquote break, insert eye roll again, for the last 15 years. They've been being a mommy. Yeah, so that's a quote too, like an actual direct quote from an experience I had a few years back. Now, next episode, in the next part, I will tell you all about that experience when we finish up this conversation with the other side of the fence. How do you re-enter the workforce after raising kids? Part of this, though, actually pertains to all of us, even if we are looking to advance in our current careers. We'll also talk about why you need a personal brand and how to build it. So you can anxiously anticipate that conversation on Friday. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you being here today and over these last 49 episodes. Like I said at the beginning, a special Jenna Zen 50th episode is on Wednesday, and part 2 of this monster-sized mom episode continues on Friday. Please remember to follow the show so that you don't miss out on any new content. If you enjoy the show, please share it with your friends who might also benefit from or enjoy it too. That is how we will grow our community. And if you might consider, I would love if you went in and rated it 5 stars, obvi, and write a review because that will help others to find us too. Reach out to me on socials, on Instagram and TikTok at Reframing Me. And on Facebook, it's Reframing Me. And join the Facebook group, Reframing Me, the podcast community, to connect with other women who are also raising teens and rediscovering themselves. Until next time, be well, communicate, and find that integration.